Get started here.
It's beneficial.
Call this special meeting of the planning board and public hearing to order. For the purposes of discussing Carson-Power project for solar array. I guess first off, obviously this is the third meeting we've had here. Since the last time, there's been a lot of submissions by the applicant addressing issues that were brought up by the public and the board in relation to the seeker process, which is the state environmental quality review of this project. So we're going to start off with the applicants going over. Where's Andrew? Is he here? Oh, okay. The applicant going over the submissions that have been made since then.
All right, hi everybody. I'll keep this one a bit more brief than the presentation in January. What Mike said, I'll first kind of go over all the work that we've gone and completed over the last 6 months to submit our initial application. I didn't say that this list is more or less the highlights. I think if you're looking for an extensive list of all the documentation we've submitted, the planning board's done a great job making those documents publicly available on the Google Drive. You can find on Pine Plan's website. So the highlights are revision to the site plan. We've actually submitted a few revisions to the site plan. I think over the last few months, we've continued to mature the design of the system and got smarter about where certain things, how certain things are designed. The impact is we've been able to move some of the modules from the most potentially visible places to more internal portions of the array, which reduces the visibility on the footprint. We completed a glare study, which found that there were no glare impacts from this project. We completed a pretty extensive visual impact study, which again yielded that there were very, very limited visibility from the project. We submitted a tree disposal plan and then revised our tree disposal plan, which gives more information about the method by which the trees will be removed. I'll go into more detail on that in a bit. Construction noise mitigation plan. We evaluated what are the noisiest actions related to construction and how can we reduce those. So we have construction hours and some limited activities on Saturdays. We've received concurrence from all agencies over the last several months. So we've coordinated with the DEC, who was signed off on our project. We've coordinated with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who was also signed off on the project. Touch base on that a bit. Revised operations and maintenance plan. We did an additional site walk to confirm the absence of any wetlands. We submitted our phase 1 environmental site assessment, which had no environmental conditions. We've submitted interconnection agreements with Central Hudson. We've submitted forest cover survey analysis, which was something that was required by both DEC and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and as part of their evaluation criteria. We've submitted a module product sheet, which reflects the module we have spec on site, which is a Hanwha module produced by a Korean manufacturer. We've also revised our seed planting mix for the meadow habitat that will be both in and outside the fence. We did include milkweed there, per comment and suggestion from both the public and from the planning board. So those are just the highlights of the work that we've done over the last several months. So I'll quickly touch on this. What you see on the left is site plan for where we started. We see on the right is where we are today, largely the same shape. We did take a high level look and decided that this is the best place on this property to have a solar facility. It is far and away the least visible. So what we've done is we've gotten more into the details about where the modules are located. So the primary the pointer's not working. Off the access road in the middle of the site, you can see we've been able to fill in modules closer to the access road. There's now a few gaps you'll see. So significant portions of the project area where we determined the bedrock was too steep or unconstructable. We'll be avoiding those spots in order to limit grading to the greatest extent practical. And the biggest revision, you'll notice that the change in shape in the southeast corner, which is closest to Bean River Road, We've substantially pulled back the fence line in the southeast corner in order to make sure we're not on the other side of the contour, so we're staying above the ridge line, which will do a tremendous job in helping shield any visibility of the project. So, and the last big change we've made here is you'll see the difference in the shape of the access road coming down off of 199. So the original access road was quite straight. We decided that was not practical, so we revisited it. We re-engineered it. The revised access road has much more shape in it. It's actually almost exactly the shape of the road as it is today. That's going to allow us to limit the need to clear any additional trees for the access road. It also helps to do a nice job limiting any sort of visibility from 199 because of the kinks in the road. You would not be able to have a keyhole view straight up the road and into the system. So as we've made revisions, we've kept our eye on the ball in terms of making sure that our application conforms and complies with Pine Plan zoning law and Pine Plan solar law. So the revised site plans as they are today are fully compliant with the exception of the fence height. So Pine Plans are not allowed for a 7-foot perimeter fence, but per the National Electric Code, that's a requirement for any sort of generating facility like this one. So we have sought an area variance through the zoning board of appeals to allow for a 7-foot perimeter fence. So one of the biggest things we did here, kind of hearing comments from the public and comments from the planning board about what are the potential visual impacts, where can you see it, how is it going to be screened, is we retained a firm called Saratoga Associates to help us put together an incredibly comprehensive visual study on the project. So we started with a view shed map, which is a computer simulation which identifies, I'll show you the map in a moment, all the areas with potential visibility, right? So these are all the spots where we think there could be some visibility of the project. We then presented that to the planning board and we discussed what areas the planning board wanted us to further study. We also discussed this with several members of the public who had specific concerns about viewpoints. We had a photographer go out on 2 different occasions to visit all of the areas that we had, the board or the public had specific concerns of potential visibility. We captured base images and leaf off conditions. We then went and we created a complex 3D model of the system, overlaid that with LiDAR data pulled from the area so that we could match the image with the exact tree height pulled from LiDAR. And then in the model, we can actually, on a tree by tree basis, remove them if they're planned to be removed for the site plans, and also add plantings where they're included as part of the site plan as well. So it's a highly accurate 3D model. Of the 14 visual locations, we found that there's a partial view at 2. So at the moment, I'll take you through some examples. We're not going to go through all 14, but the visual impacts we found to be are extremely limited. So as we go through, just one thing to keep in mind, we're talking about a slightly greater than 40-acre solar farm, and one of the things you do not really see in the visual images is a large solar farm, right? So here's the map we conducted, or we put together. You'll see the blue spots indicate areas where there was potential visibility for what the computer said. The yellow shapes indicate where we collected images and put together visual renders. So this is an existing condition from a location off of Skunks, Missouri. This is the proposed condition. So you'll see the white shape in the back is the exact location of the solar facility, including the height of the panels and including all trees that will have to be removed for our construction. So a lot of the images look exactly like this one. There's not really a change from the existing condition to the proposed condition, but it is helpful in identifying where exactly the facility will be located relative to this image. So this is example 1. Example 2, this is another image off of Skunks Missouri Road. So this is one where there is a partial view. One of the things you'll notice when I go to the next slide is the tree line, the evergreen trees kind of directly centered. The shape of that tree line will change. There are trees there that will have to be removed as part of the construction. And you'll see to the right of the tree line, a little thin line will appear. That is indicative of where the solar farm is. So see a very, very small portion of the solar farm, and what we're looking at from this angle is just the edge of the array. So that is the partial view of all the homes on Skunks Missouri. We found this was the only one that yielded any sort of partial view in the system. So next example, this is on the driveway off of Prospect Hill Road. So we're now looking south towards the system. Same story as the first example. Once construction is completed, no visibility to the system. The trees that will remain to the north of the system that will remain after construction do a great job of screening any visibility. There was a previous, we did revise this to one of the previous version of this image off of where the model was completed off of a previous site plan, where the road was straight, and we did have a keyhole view from this angle. When we put a kink in the road, so there's no keyhole view, any visibility of the panels completely disappeared. That was our most recent revision to the site plans. So example 4, this is from the fire tower. So we did ask our photographer on a nice day to hike the fire tower and take a few base images. It'll be a little hard to see because it's far off and the light isn't that great in the room. You can see in the center towards the back, there's a field. You can see the field for the existing condition today, and the field gets a little bit larger. And if you look very, very closely, you would be able to make out some of the panels in that field. That is the second partial view that we found from the vision center.
Andrew, do you have a laser pointer for us?
I do, but it's not.
Well,
Should be working. Final one, this is from Winchell Mountain Road. Similar story. Here's the existing condition, and here's the proposed condition. That is where the facility will be located, but from this view, you don't have any visibility of the system after construction. So agency concurrence is one of the big things that we've continued to chase down in the last several months. So we've coordinated with DOT, who's accepted our driveway plan. We've coordinated with Ag and Markets, who's issued their final determination of no adverse effect. We've coordinated with the DEC, which they required us to complete a forest cover survey analysis that we provided. That our project manager at the DEC issued a no-take permit required, which means that as long as we abide by the DEC mandated tree clearing window, there's no impact to endangered bat species or bog turtle as related to our action. And then similar, if not the same concurrence from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which has the same species on their list. We received earlier this week our final determination, no take permit required, again with the condition that we abide by the tree clearing window. So tree removal, I think it's it's unfortunate that there are trees that have to be removed as a function of our construction. So here's what we've done on trees. I think we've been very thoughtful about how the project is laid out, so that we're utilizing the existing fields to the greatest extent that we can, and that limits the tree clearing to the greatest extent we can. Again, I spoke about how we pulled in our tree clearing line from the southeast corner in order to leave very mature evergreen trees that do a great job of preserving view impacts. We've also re-engineered the shape of the access road to limit any tree clearing along the access road as much as we can. We did retain a firm called Hudson Valley Forestry, who's a local forester. They conducted a tree survey of the entire property, which will be available to the planning board, and they provided recommendations for tree removal best practices. We reflected their recommendations in a tree clearing plan, which has been submitted to the board as a supplement to our initial application. Really, the two big things we're thinking about, one is limit the extent of chipping to the greatest extent that we can. So what that means is any large pieces of lumber that can be utilized off-site will be. So that means usable hardwoods or softwoods will be sent to the lumberyard. Additional wood that has value as firewood will be used there. So we're hoping to get big pieces of wood off-site as much as we can to avoid on-site chipping to the greatest extent possible. We've also agreed to include brush piles along the outside of our fence, so trees that don't have any residual value for firewood and lumber will be stacked in brush piles. Brush piles, that's to the west and south of the system. That's to create wildlife habitat. Any chips that will have to be created at some limit of chipping is completely inevitable with the extent of tree clearing that we're talking about. Will be used on site as much as possible. So we'll be using the chips for erosion and sediment control. We'll be using it to help with landscaping for the plantings that we'll be installing instead of uses. Again, we did complete the forest cover survey analysis, essentially looking at the existing and then proposed condition and what the forest cover looks like. And again, the DEC and US Fish and Wildlife found that was a de minimis impact to habitat for bat species. Regardless, we did have included bat boxes on our site plans, per the latest revision. And the last thing on tree removal, I've talked about it before, we are going to enter the entire property into a perpetual conservation easement. As a part of that easement, there will be 70 forested acres that will be protected. So we are talking about the clearing of roughly 26 acres of trees. We're also talking about perpetual conservation of 70 acres of trees. So we're noting there. So noise mitigation, again, we did submit a more detailed construction noise mitigation plan to the board.
Wait, I had a question. 70 acres of trees? Or, and what, how many acres total?
So the entire property is 172 acres. The entire property will be entered into the conservation easement. Post-construction, it'll be about 70 acres of forested area that will be conserved.
And total acreage conserved,
172, the entire property.
okay, including what's under the,
Correct.
that's including what's under the panels that once they're
Correct.
decommissioned.
Correct.
Is that going to speak of chain of custody?
Yes. Yeah. So construction noise mitigation, our construction hours are limited to 8 to 6 Monday through Saturday. We're anticipating a 6-month construction window. We have agreed that no operation machinery or deliveries will be permitted on Saturdays. So 8 to 6 on Saturdays will be a permitted construction time, but only for manual labor. Again, that's going to be lawful for neighbors and limiting our noise on Saturdays to the greatest extent possible.
Excuse me, Warren, was that Warren that asked the question? Could you repeat that? Because I don't know if everybody was able to hear your question and your answer. Question was, who is holding the conservation? Who is holding the conservation? Yeah, fine, okay, it's here.
Scenic concept. Yeah. Thank you. So this is my last slide here. I think we've been into details of the construction of the solar project for a while. I think high level, it's really easy to lose sight that the goal of this project is environmental protection. Right? We're talking about.
Actually, I'm sorry, just back up to the last slide.
Yeah.
So what's gonna happen what will happen on Saturdays?
Manual activity. So we submitted a document to the planning board which specifically lists machine operated construction activities will be prohibited on Saturdays, and then any permitted activities on Saturdays, which are just manual labor.
Which is?
Yeah, it'll be probably a lot of electrical work after the panels are installed. So the goal of this project is to help combat climate change. I think it's incredibly easy to lose sight of that. When we're talking about renewable energy resource, the energy that's produced by this system will be displacing energy that's produced by a fossil fuel generator, nearby, right? So we're talking about the annual displacement of 13,000 metric tons of CO2. And just to put that to scale, that's the equivalent of the carbon sequestered annually by over 15,000 acres of trees. So it's substantial, and it's equivalent to the emissions caused by close to 1.5 million gallons of gasoline consumed. So the impact to the environment here, in a good way, is absolutely substantial. That's all I have. So, right, I think you wanted to.
Well, just first, does the board have any questions? I know I popped in there a couple times, but does anyone have any questions? I have a couple questions. If no one else has any. Can you put up the first slide that has the project map? Yes. Okay, can you point out, so can we go over the 2 parcels that are involved again, and just, I know the status of what we're going to do with that has not been totally determined with the assessor, but just point them out on the map where there's 2 parcels, correct?
Yeah, this is zoomed in, so you can't see the entirety of both parcels,
Right.
but it essentially splits the system and then goes on. So it's this dash line.
That's
So-
no, but currently what's there? What's that
That's the
part?
current parcel.
That is the current part, splitting the system?
Correct.
What's the piece up there on the left? Is that a piece? I can't quite make that out.
Those are neighboring parcels.
That's a neighboring parcel, okay. So it currently splits the two. But it's not quite what would have to be for if it was on two different parcels. If you couldn't get the assessor to do what we're asking the assessor to do with the
This would
two,
be fully compliant.
this is complete,
So what we've talked about is potentially in the future, consolidating the two parcels into one, which we would like to do.
right?
But we have separated the parcels, the systems, one for each parcel. In the case that we're unable to consolidate the parcels, this would be fully compliant with the DPS.
And that's the current lot lines as they exist now?
Yes,
They just happen to coincide with where the,
we designed to that.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the systems is a bit bigger than the other as a result.
Right, okay. The ZBA status, like what, remind everyone what happened with the fence?
Yeah, so I think the rule is for a 6-foot fence in side yards, a 4-foot fence in front yards, so per the National Electric Code, we have to have a 7-foot perimeter fence. So we sought an area variance with the zoning board, which was received positively, so we've been to 2 zoning board meetings and conducted a public hearing with the zoning board. But they cannot make a final determination until after the planning board completes its scope. Yeah.
Okay. The chipping plan, so you said there still will be chipping, what are we still chipping, like what's gonna be, like, are there gonna actually be like, you know, what's the limit of size of what's gonna be chipped in the new plan?
Yeah, I think it's I'd have to take a look at the number for the DPH restriction, but it is in the board this point.
I'm sorry?
There should be a DPH restriction for what is the
DVH is, what is it? Diameter.
To the size of
Smaller trees and brush less than 18 inches in diameter will be chipped.
Less than 18 inches.
Yes.
So I think that's not going to be everything, right? I think what we've agreed to do is ask the forester to remove trees, large trees in, for lumber or firewood uses, to the greatest extent practicable, so that the on-site trees that will need to be chipped is as low as possible.
Andrew, in your climate change slide, the last point has to do with the carbon emissions
Yes.
comparisons. Could you just go through the details and the specifics of how those numbers were calculated?
Sure, it's from the EPA. So in a previous document, we submitted the full, was the net carbon benefit document, referenced the EPA calculator that was used to calculate these numbers. So it's the EPA's estimate based off the annual electricity production of the solar farm and the equivalent avoided emissions from the fossil fuel generation that would be existing otherwise.
Right, I'm just wondering if you would be able to be a little bit more specific for the benefit of everybody here.
I don't think I'm off the top of my head, but I think the EPA calculator certainly has resources and citations for how the math is done.
So you just like, you go to the calculator's what, website or something?
Yeah.
And you plugged in how big your system is?
Correct.
You mentioned the bat boxes, how many bat boxes are have you
We had
put in?
boxes in 2 locations on the western side of the site.
Like 2 boxes? Like how big is that? How big is a bat box? I mean, is that accurate? Is that what you're saying? Like just like a bat box like this?
Yeah.
George, do we know anything about bat boxes and how effective they are? Do they really like these things or do they prefer the?
to the extent that they're not required to provide any
Right.
potential habitat, I think putting bat boxes in is a good idea and showing good big effort, trying to do, make a good project, right? Like I said, DEC and Fish and Wildlife have reviewed it. They've already issued their approvals, without bat boxes. So any bat boxes is just above and beyond. Yeah.
How many bats go in a bat box? Like, we don't know.
Totally, it's impossible to answer the question, really, with any certainty, right? I mean, if there are bats there that are looking for a place to go, they'll utilize it. If they're not there, they won't utilize it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about bats, so like, if 2 are there, will no more come in, or will like 30 crowd in there if they could fit and need it? We don't know. No.
Well, John, the greatest threat to the 2 endangered bat species is the white nose disease. It's not a loss of habitat. Obviously, a loss of habitat is impactful. I think the bat boxes we voluntarily wanted to add because we had an area to do so. But the preservation of the 70 forested acres will certainly be more impactful as a benefit to the bat species than the bat boxes. No doubt about it.
Visual impact, anything on visual impact? Anyone have questions on visual impact? No one asked them. I think we've kind of trod that over pretty good at this point. Anyone have any more questions? All right, thank you, Andrew.
Sure.
We're going to switch to Frank now. Tell us about seeker.
Yes. By the way, if anybody didn't get this, there's nothing more boring than an environmental assessment form, particularly at a distance. So there's other this in the back there. And if you didn't get one, feel free to take one, it's funny. And your way out, you can get it now. But I'm going to just explain where are we. So again, by the way, I want to differentiate. I'm Frank Fish with TFJ, and we are the consultants to the planning board, and we also help the committee and the council on the solar law itself. And I just wanted to mention here, early on, that the solar law here in the town a little bit more strict than the solar law that the state model has in that. We wrote in to this type of solar facility called Tier 3 facility that it's a special permit. So the planning board can't get to that yet, quite yet, or site plan, until they make a seeker determination. And the same with the zoning board of appeal. You just heard that going from a 6-foot fence to a 7-foot fence requires a variance from the zoning board of appeals. Nothing can be granted until the state environmental quality review that is complied with. And it has, by the way, we've had 3 Saturday sessions, so at the past Saturday session, I sort of reviewed this process, but I think it's worth just saying where we are in it now. At the last Saturday session, planning board had a lot of issues. They wanted more information on this application, and that's why we asked Andrew to summarize for you so that you had a sense of. There's about a dozen things that the planning board asked the applicant for, and what the state environmental quality review says. That when they get an application, as soon as possible after that application, you should make a determination under seeker as to whether this has a significant adverse impact on the environment, that's the words of the state law, or it does not rise to that level. If it has a significant adverse impact on the environment, you need to do a full environmental testing. If, however, it doesn't have that, and you can provide enough information in the environmental assessment form, then it's possible what's called a negative declaration. That is, no environmental testing has been done, and none of the environmental impacts, and there are impacts to this, but none of them rise to a significant level. significant adverse zone. So that's a decision the planning board has not made yet. And where we are in the process right now is there's a part one of the EAF, that's the responsibility of the applicant to explain the project. Then there's a part two, which this is here. And I'm just gonna go through part two. Show you, it's a working document, by the way. This, what I'm showing you is not a final document. And we didn't want to do a final document. And I think the planning board should not have to make it determination of significance until it hears from you today. And obviously until the public hearing, at least on seeker, is closed. So that they're sure they have all the information they want. Something happened to this. Oh, good, okay. So I'll just go through it very briefly. This is, I guess, page. See what we are.
That's page 2.
Yeah, page 2, so we go back. Yeah, just so I'm gonna go through and have this, you can follow it, but basically what this is 18 categories. That Department of Environmental Conservation, EPC, in Albany has produced this. So this is a state form, and I'm just gonna highlight it. So we're asked first, what is the impact on land? Well, we've checked off, I shouldn't say we've gone through this 3 Saturday sessions, but the planning board has done about a half dozen sessions reviewing all this material as it's come in. So on this first category, impact on land, the decision was yes, there are impacts on land. They've checked them off, but those impacts don't rise to a large impact. So that's the first one. The second page.
Well, Frank, so we haven't, I mean, we haven't voted on.
That's
these
right.
answers
That's
yet.
right. This is all for discussion.
Right.
This is a working document. Planning board has made and final decisions on this, but where we are right now is mulling, where the planning board is mulling over these impacts. And second one here is impacts on geological resources and impacts on surface water. Those are the 2 things here. We're not aware of real impacts on geological features, so that's checked no. Impacts on surface water is checked yes. There's an impact, but those were not deemed to, so far as we know, were not deemed to be things that had large impacts. And the next one, the next slide, I think this goes over. Impacts on groundwater. We checked no, we don't know if significant. There was also a determination that it's not wet, but impacts on groundwater, check no, and then impacts on flooding, we're also checked no. And then the next page is impacts on air. And then impacts on air, check no, it didn't meet the, by the way, the criteria for judging these, I should have said that. And you'll see the details underneath there that the state looks at in terms of impacts. But the impacts on the plants and animals is an impact that the board clearly wanted much more information on. Just heard the discussion about bats, heard the discussion on breeds, heard that discussion. And there, you see check off. And by the way, we put this in yellow. And the reason for putting it in yellow, this is still under discussion with the board. The board's still taking a look at this. But right now, there are a couple of check marks here, which are moderate to large impacts in terms of the impacts on plants and animals. So what Sinkers say, yes, is you have those impacts. We must get more information. See whether those impacts can be changed to a smaller impact. If they are, through some of those 12 responses that the applicant just summarized for you, then they don't rise to a level of significant adverse, according to the state guidelines. Planning board hasn't made that decision yet, because they've now got the information they requested. And that is what was summarized for you. By the way, this is all public information, so it all comes on for your. But that is the first one. That's a sort of large impact that planning board has to now assess now that they've got all the information they requested. So the next page, I think.
Oh, sorry, I understand actually
Oh, thank you. All right, thanks. So that was a large impact that the planning board has to discuss. So the next one here, after that is on page 8. That's going into impacts on agricultural resources. You did see some impacts on agricultural resources, but so far, the planning board's discussion, those are impacts, but they're small impacts. And the next one is non, and that's impacts on aesthetic resources. And that one was checked, and you can see in yellow again, and this is not on the, I didn't print these out in color, so I'm gonna, that's why I wanted to just highlight a couple of yellows here on discussion with the board. The visual impacts of this were all presented by Saratoga Associates at a board meeting. All board meetings were color, so some of you may have seen those. There were some this morning, but the board saw a much more expansive presentation. We checked. Board is discussing that, has been discussing that as a large impact. Again, if something's large, they have to make a determination of the rise then to a level of significant adverse. So that one is the second one that's checked large. Then the next one here, historic and archaeological resources, check no, we got nothing back from the state. From the state historic preservation office. So the next one, the next page here is let's see. Yeah, impacts on transportation. Check. Basically, no impact on energy. Yeah, because that impact on energy. Impact on noise. Yes, those impacts on noise. Board asks for more information. So those are the have to be evaluated. And then impacts on human health. That's what comes next. Those were also felt to be there weren't significant impact at one time. It doesn't meet the criteria that the state set out. But the last one, next page, community consistency with community plans. Thing here is that, and we help the board do the comprehensive plan to find plans that help town with this. So we feel that this is consistent with community plans, but the final one, consistency with community character, that's the other one that I think we got one more there. Yeah, consistency with community character is checked in yellow, and here they are where we think there's two areas there that could be large impacts, and the board has to evaluate. So, in summary, in fact, we're done with the. I just wanted to summarize where we were. So, in summary, the board has been discussing 3 large impacts. And they've asked for more information, which they now think is, and those impacts are somewhat hunted animals. That's 7 in the form, category 9 in the forms of sentence vision. And they asked for a lot more information on that, and they got a lot of information from the applicants consultant, well, Saratoga Associates. And then they asked for more information on human character. And in terms of the fencing, just some of the questions you heard from the chair, in terms of trees, within on property. So that's where we are in seeker I just want to mention, did the boards receive letters? I can confirm, so we have from both the federal government, Fish and Wildlife, and then from the state, DVC, also from state transportation and budgets. So we wanted to have those all on the record before the board goes to deliberations on their determinations. What Seeker says again is the board should try to make this decision. This is something that rarely happens. Within 20 days of an application being submitted, well, obviously the board's been studying this for 6 months. And the reason is the big or in the Seeker recommendation, Seeker law, it says or 20 days or until you receive adequate information enough to make your determination. So that's what the board, I don't know how many of you were here at last meeting, that's for a lot more information. And now all the letters from the other agencies are in place and the board has the studies that it asked for. So they are in a position to, I think, make that determination of significance. But they have to determine at their next meetings whether they're comfortable with it and whether these three major impacts do not rise to the level of significance, adverse significance, or whether they do. And that's the board's decision. In order to make the decision on, we've recommended to the board that they close the public hearing after hearing you all today. If they're comfortable with it, that they close the hearing at least for Seeker first. There's three other things that need to be done. There's a variance from the ZBA, but more, it's important that we need that variance. But before this board is also a special permit and site plan approval. So our thought is that, and from what we've heard, a lot of your focus, the public's focus, if I can generalize it, has been more on the big environmental impact issue. And there hasn't been a focus yet on site plan and special permit. You go through the code, or the board has to make a determination of special permit. So even if they were to say hypothetically, and I don't want to say the board has to decide this, not me, or not us, we're advising to the board. If they were to make a positive declaration and a full yes would have to be done, you're talking a year. No one can act until Seeker is completed, so that would put this whole thing off for a year. If they made a negative declaration, that is, the applicant would have to agree, which I presume they would, but I can't speak for the applicant. All the things they've mitigated, all the things they've committed to are part and parcel of the proposed action. Board determines that that has mitigated necessarily, then they could make what's called a negative declaration. So if they did that at a next meeting or two, whatever they do, whenever they make this determination, that's not the end of the process. That just allows the process to move forward. That's the first step. So it allows the process to move forward. Then the board would go to the special permit. And special permit has some slightly, as Warren has reminded the legal counsel to the board, that has some slightly additional standards that have to be met. And then there's site plan review. So for instance, some of the questions the chair just raised on the two parcels versus one, there's details in site plan review. Seeker was not meant to replace the board's special permit powers, which are written into the solar law here, and give the board real power. And that is also the power of making sure that what the applicant has committed to become conditions, conditions of the special permit. The board, if you violate the special permit, then the board has to town. So there's special permit that has to be done, and then site plan. So we haven't gotten to that point. In order to get there, the board would have to close the hearing, at least for purposes of Seeker, perhaps continue it, continue it to future dates for special permit and site plan. And then if they were to make a negative declaration purposes of secret, they could go on and do site plan. And also the zoning board of appeals could then act. All right. They make a positive declaration that is supported by the impact statement necessary. Then we take it up about a year to do is better experience, and then those decisions would be put off at some point. So I think that's where we are in terms of next steps. And I hope that just clarifies the process. And then I'll turn it back to the chair. For public comment.
Well, does any of the board have any questions for Frank? Or any questions about what we saw in that the proposed document? No. All right. Warren, yes, you want to say something?
Andrew, supplies with calculations, background calculations on the net carbon benefit that you discussed. You weren't able to answer one of these questions. I'd like to have that by the next meeting. And I'd like to see a copy of the other draft conservation easement to student council that's on to a draft.
It's a draft, I'm not sure if that's something that we can dispose of. So we
We'd like to see that about.
So
Warren, we need that for seeker or
I'd like to see it.
for seeker. Anything else? Or
No.
any comment on the process? All right, so at this point, we're going to take a 5-minute comfort break. And if anyone wants to speak, there's still this sign up sheet here, whoever hasn't signed up yet. And we're going to set up the microphone. Everyone will have 3 minutes to talk. Mr. Lyons is representing several people, so I did allow for him to have 9 minutes. Then after everyone speaks, you can get on the list again to speak again if you wish. Okay. But I have my mom's house, it used to be the.
Yes.
Not Paris, Karen. She was like in mother's. I'm sorry, microphone. Oh, the microphone thing. I need to see.
It's nice to see the habitation. The whole top of the hill.
Camera set to record that area.
Yes.
Okay, so. First up on the list is Mr. John Lyons.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is John Lyons. I am a licensed lawyer with the firm of Brandon Lyons, and I'm here today representing a group of residents from the vicinity of this project. In addition to my oral remarks, I'll be submitting to you a memo from my firm and memos from Nan Stolzenberg and George James, both professional planners. Many of you know Nan because she was the planning consultant for Pine Plains for many years. I thank the board for the time and effort that it has devoted thus far to the environmental review of this project. Our firm represents planning boards in 5 other communities, and I'm acutely aware of the effort that's required and the fact that you're all volunteers taking time out of your own lives to work on behalf of your community. Thank you. While progress has been made in this environmental review, I'm afraid there's one thing that hasn't changed. The project still warrants the issuance of a positive declaration. Some of the adverse impacts have been sufficiently addressed, but others have not, and the seeker standard for a negative declaration has not been met. EAF Part 2, questions 17 and 18 require the lead agency to determine if the proposed project is consistent with community plans and with community character. In her 2 memos to you, Nan Stolzenberg has exhaustively demonstrated why this project is not consistent with either the town's comprehensive plan or with community character. A single argument has been used to refute her assertion. In a proposed draft EAF Part 3, the applicant's engineer said the project is consistent with community character because the town board made a legislative determination that these types of uses are in harmony with the zoning law, the existing natural landscape, and with the neighborhood. They also said that the inclusion of solar facilities as permitted uses in the zoning law is tantamount to a legislative finding that the permitted use is in harmony with the general zoning plan and that solar facilities will not adversely affect community character. The problem is that's not true. The argument is based on 2 false presumptions. False presumption number 1 is that this project is allowed in this location by the zoning law, but that hasn't been shown to be true yet. To be true, the project must meet all the zoning law special use permit criteria. And in her March 7th memo, Nan Stolzenberg demonstrated why this project fails to meet 10 out of 11 of those criteria. False presumption number 2 is that in developing the solar law, the town board carefully considered the potential adverse impacts of commercial solar development on the town. I cast no aspersions on the town board. Like you, they are citizens who are volunteering their time to try to make their community better. In all our towns, we need to be grateful for the important service that town board members provide. But that doesn't mean they're perfect, and in this instance, they made a mistake. Nan Stolzenberg looked carefully at all of the publicly available records and videos. Her June 8th memo takes you through those records and demonstrates that the town board did not take a sufficient look at the potential environmental damages that could come from allowing commercial solar in large areas of this rural town. And also describes in detail how to properly plan for commercial solar uses before you adopt the law allowing them. The planning process she describes did not take place in this case. Consequently, the applicant's argument fails because the presumption that the town board took a hard and thorough look at the adverse impacts of community solar is wrong. They did not. Because of this, you can't say that the judgment has already been made that commercial solar projects like this one are consistent with community plans or community character. In her June 8th memo, Nan says that she stands by the conclusions in both of her memos and states that a positive declaration should be issued so that these impacts can be properly studied and adequate mitigation proposed. She ends her discussion by saying the following. Further, a moratorium should be enacted by the town board to rectify deficiencies in the solar law so that proper attention is placed on ensuring that the environmental and community character, vision, and goals of the town are upheld. Deficiencies in the solar law can be corrected by enacting a moratorium on commercial solar projects, one which includes this project, so the town board can go back and correct its mistake and properly plan for commercial solar and then amend the solar law accordingly. I agree, and my clients agree wholeheartedly. Beyond community plans and character, visual impact has also not been sufficiently addressed in one critical respect. Our expert, George James, found the Saratoga Associates assessment to be generally accurate. That assessment shows that the on-site forest is providing almost all the screening. George asked me how the forest is being protected so that there will be a guarantee that it will continue to effectively carry out its screening function for the life of the project. I told him that the plan doesn't address that issue. The plan simply assumes that the existing forest will always be there in the same condition, and that's unrealistic. Forest fires, diseases, weather events like a blowdown from a microburst all could destroy the forest and significantly diminish the effectiveness of its screening function. The project plan must assure that the screening function of the on-site forest will be maintained in its present condition and at the same level of effectiveness throughout the life of this facility. Otherwise, sufficient visual impact mitigation can only be viewed as something to be hoped for, not something that is guaranteed for the life of this project as it should be. If the forest screening is ever diminished, this board should require that dead or dying trees must be replaced in kind with mature trees of a similar height and breadth, so they will replicate the screening function that has been performed by the dead or dying tree, and do so to the standards shown in the Saratoga Associates photo simulations. Without that, the significant adverse environmental impact from visual impact from this project have not been sufficiently mitigated, and a negative declaration cannot be justified. In closing, the preservation of community character is clearly the overriding theme of the town's comprehensive plan. Community character is the quality that Pine Plains residents treasure most about their town. I anticipate that some of my clients will be testifying about that this morning. It would be a tragedy if this environmental review fails to take a hard look at the consistency of this project with community plans and community character. That failure would compound the town board's mistake and yet another error. There's still time to act. There's still time to do what's right. A valid negative declaration cannot be properly issued on these facts. We urge you to issue a positive declaration. In addition, the review of this project has exposed some problems with the solar law. I urge the town board to act now before environmental damage occurs. I urge them to adopt a moratorium on all commercial solar, including this project, so that the solar law can be reconsidered after proper planning and consideration. Thank you again for your consideration and your attention.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are you submitting 2 documents today?
I'm submitting 3 documents today.
What's the date to them?
George Gaines' document is dated June 8th. Nan's memo is dated June 8th, and my memo is dated June 9th. Okay.
So we're just getting these today.
Yes, we are. You're just getting them right now. I'm handing to Tricia 12 paper copies. So there are copies for the board. There's also a copy of my remarks. And I'll be submitting electronic copies as soon as I get back to my office today. For anybody else here that's interested in my submission, I have about 15 paper copies here that are available. Happy to hand them out to anybody else that's curious about them.
George,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I gave 12.
Yeah, you can have, I wanted to do that.
Pennies for everybody. And I'll also try them with your hand. Thank you.
Next up.
No, hold on. Are we, gentlemen, are we good to continue? Are we good to continue? Yeah. Okay. All right, next up is Mr. John Farrell.
Morning.
Morning.
Pennsylvania College. Former college. I'd like to ask Mr. Gordon a question. Mr. Gordon. What town in New York State do you go to, where you build projects and, successfully operated, so we can figure out what really happened with the project, the design and build plans? We provided, sorry, is this?
Well, we're not really usually doing question and answer, John, but
That's on that question, I'm presuming he's never built.
no, we're just not getting into a dialogue. The
Okay.
format we do now, there was some submission, or, well, we'll just go ahead with your comments and then.
The comments are pretty simple. Town of Pine is faced with this project, which the best I can figure out has no benefit to anyone in Pine. Mr. Gordon's presentation on the last sheet showed what he said was the main purpose of this project. The main purpose of this project is to make money. And it's to make money for Carson. It's to make money for Morgan Stanley. It's to make money for rich investors who are going to tap into federal and state tax credits that have nothing to do with Pine Finance. I've really struggled to try to figure out what we get out of this project, and I can't come up with a thing. Given that, if the town is really must take time, think this thing through, figure out what's going on. We saw a lot of reports, a lot of facts, a lot of supposed facts. We saw a lot of, frankly, gibberish, bureaucratic gibberish about state reports, federal permits, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, they're making this up as they go along. They've never built a project like this before. And if it goes awry, we're the ones that are stopping them. I think that given that, we really have to work hard, take our time, figure out what's going on. I'd like to make a quick comment about the one benefit that they seem to suggest. One is tax benefits for the town. Presentation that Andrew made on January 23rd shows about $50,000 of taxes over the existing project per year. That $50,000 represents 0.5% of the taxes that are collected in this town. So that if you have a $4,000 tax bill, you can reduce your tax bill by $20. That's not a reason to buy this project. In terms of the
John, all right, you're up. That alarm, yeah.
at the end of it,
Well, you can come back again around after everyone else talks. Thank you. On the question you asked, Andrew, before, yes, Carson-Power has not completed a developed a project. We've asked them that question to completion as of yet. But again, their partner is Next Stamp, and we did get Next Stamp to provide localities around here and they provided a map. It's somewhere in the documents of where they've completed projects, including was Hyde Park and up in Hudson. Yeah.
Next step is not a developer.
No, they're the ones that are going to be operating.
Right, the next step is running one in Stanford.
Right.
And if
No,
the supervisor.
they're not.
Stanford.
Well, as far as I know, they're not, but maybe they are now. They didn't build that. Anyway, let's go to the next. I actually talked to Wendy Burton.
What happened with whatever?
No, she's not. No, she's not. But again, I don't think it's the same company, but whatever. Next, who's next? Leanne Tremar? Fremar, I'm sorry.
Your public speaking.
No, that's okay.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to visit for the residents, property owners, taxpayers of this community. Shown to the other side of the represented here today. We appreciate the public input process the planning board has overseen and iterated to improve upon over the last few months. We appreciate Andrew and Carson-Power's engagement with some of the most impacted residents and landowners with the viewshed impact. Viewshed impacted by this proposal and the revisions to some of the most egregious aspects of the project from the viewshed perspective. We understand the planning board's priorities are to evaluate, accelerate, and in some instances, between solar energy projects for the town of Pine Plains in keeping with the state of New York. The green energy transition is an important priority to the nation and to the state, and many people concerned about climate change. I am not here today to argue against the benefits of a clean energy transition. I am here to assert that while this project has been argued to have minimal visual impact from the vantage points presented today, the representation of the aesthetic impact to aesthetic resources is understated. Additionally, it is by definition extremely out of character with the landscape, beauty, and community character of the region and town and plains. The Pine Plains Planning Board has a responsibility to uphold that any, and in this case, a large-scale industrial solar development retains consistency with community character, both visual in nature, but also in the usage of the land and its impact on the community, which by definition is made up by the people and the routines and the habits of that community. The large majority of the land in our community is residential and agricultural in nature. Carson-Power proposal and the land use is not in keeping with that character and sets a very dangerous precedent for the land use of all other agricultural properties in our area. While the existence of Carson-Power as an isolated eyesore in our community may seem permissible to the board and to the community, ask yourselves and this community if every other, every third, or even every fifth agricultural property in our area were to be fair game for power developments of this size and scale, what would the impact to our community character be? The planning board through this process will continue to remind us all of the responsibility to fairly evaluate this project. So I would argue that we should be equally reflective in the precedents we are setting for our community character. The natural beauty and natural resources of our community is why I purchased property here. It is why people for generations decided to purchase here, invest in land and develop and restore homes here, raise families here, grow wool here, farm here, fish here, hike here, hunt here, camp here, garden here, stargaze here, and seek solace here. Without the careful preservation of that aspect of this community and the reason why people do the things that they do here specifically, because of the natural beauty, community closeness, and the natural resources of this community, well, there would cease to be a community character to preserve.
Next up is Rebecca. Wait.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Booth, and I'm from Carson-Power, and I live on Wisconsin, Missouri. So we're going to be directly affected by this project. We'd also like to thank the board and understanding these people's decisions, time consuming, you guys are volunteers. Thank you very much for listening to us today. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm not from around here, at least not originally. I grew up in Tasmania, and in the over 20 years since I've left, I've had the opportunity to live in some of the most amazing places in the world. But it wasn't until we moved to Pine Plains about 4 years ago that we're like, we found our home. But you don't need to tell me to tell you what an extraordinary place it is. The incredible farms and barns and homesteads, the beautiful open spaces, the amazing wildlife, the woods and outcrops. The fact that no matter where you're going, there's well more than one way to go, and each road is more charming and more beautiful than the next. When we decided to live here, we wanted to integrate. We didn't want to mess with the place or with the natural beauty or surroundings. We worked really hard to create a home that fits with a sense of place and community. We're not trying to change this special place that we've come to love. And that's why we're standing here today doing kind of like that. Okay. Anything that's built here, whether it's a home or an industrial scale project, must protect community character. It's what's required of us as homeowners. And it should be no different with big companies, particularly those with short-term profit motives, will not set roots here and will not be part of or contribute to this community once their project's complete. This project and others like it will have a huge impact on all of the things that we love about our community. We, I suspect, like most people in the room, are very much for renewable power. It's a great idea to encourage people to build solar on their homes, solar paneling, and we agree that under the right circumstances, projects like this could have the potential. We shouldn't be rushing into projects like this. These projects will have a permanent impact on the environment and community character that is simply too significant to brush aside without a full environmental and community impact review. And make no mistake, this is just the first of many that will follow both here and in the So this isn't a decision about a single project, but rather a decision about what aspects of our community and landscape we are willing to protect. So let's take a moment to consider the impact of the Carson-Power plant that we have on this town. But people mentioned a moratorium, and that's what we're calling environmental impact review, and that's what we're asking for as well. Because to ask the place of this is like
Daniel Ernsten. Ernsten. So hold on, one moment then.
Can I get a copy of this? Give me a couple of that.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay,
The mic might be off there. Yeah.
Did anyone ever see them residing in the hospital for a little bit? Been coming up here for about 4 years. And then the place down in Smithfield, 83. So last year, for a place up here, my place ever since. Most of them too, full of them. But I'm very interested in the progress of this project. I'm just, 4 quick notes. At the March 22nd, I attended all meetings, hearings. The March 22nd meeting, which will also be on YouTube, the planning board's lawyers with Plansky. At the 32-minute mark, this guy was checked by the planning board that he and the town engineer for Schmidt strongly recommended that the best way for the board to evaluate the visual impact would be for the planning board to require the applicant's new test with balloons or active marked sticks at house heights. And to do so before the trees are leafed out in order to, well, avoid additional scrutiny should their secret termination be challenged in court. That's what we recommend you have done. But so far, planning board is not requiring us again. 2. At the May 10th public meeting, which I also attended, viewed on YouTube, Mr. Allen of Saratoga Associates, comparing video said at the 15th minute that the LiDAR they relied on to generate the photo simulations is not as accurate as the actual tree survey done by the other contractor hired by the Hudson Valley Forest Group. They only surveyed the trees outside. This is another reason why this community should not rely on 3D so-called photo simulations, because they're simply not the most accurate way to assess visual impact. Additionally, the Saratoga simulations were done with simulated trees and therefore do not show what the actual visual impact will be for the 6 months of the year that most of the trees are, when most of the trees are leafless. And when there will be much greater visibility, 24,000 annual red at the proposed site. At the 49th minute, Mr. Allen of Saratoga said, without trees, the panels would be visible. This is another reason why we need a balloon test, one that should be done in autumn or winter, as the planning board's lawyer and the town's engineer specifically advised at the March 22nd meeting. Forward. The Saratoga simulations are from only 14 specific locations, including one from Skissing Mountain. 13 are from private residences. This does not give the public an opportunity to see with their own eyes at various times of the day the actual visual impact of the proposed array. I think these 4 serious visual impact assessment deficiencies require that the board get delay any decision until the audible review has to be done. Thank you.
And remember, if anyone didn't finish, they want to come back up again, you want again?
Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt.
No. Yeah. John, you want me? Kathleen it is, right, Augustine?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Augustine, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of zoning and time plans and that's to shed some light on what's happening now. I was involved in the organization called Climate Change United. It's one of the people in this room that was steering committee. We formed a group in the first corporation in climate plans and was interested in putting 1,100 houses west of town on our golf property, which they now own. Climate plans had no zoning at the time, so aside from raising $500,000 to make the project, the curtail the number of residents is allowed. We elected people who live on the town where at the time that would advocate the zoning. We got the zoning, it wasn't perfect, there was something called the new neighborhood development. And that zoning law helped us enormously in curtailing the Jersey project, but it later became irrelevant and obsolete. It didn't work. So I believe the planning board in town got rid of that piece. Here again, as I understand it, the town board had numerous solar applications before them that were largely of domestic nature. And in their desire to not hold up people's personal projects, they had to come up with some solar zoning laws. I think that probably what happened is they weren't really thinking about industrial sized projects at the time. And therefore, the zoning laws that we're now using to look at this project are probably flawed and need to be revisited. I think to do that, there has to be a moratorium so that the town board and the planning board does better do these things to make sure that what happens in the future here is what we all want. Further, I will add one thing, which is in the area around this project, where many of us, myself included, there are many conservation easements held by the Dutchess Land Conservancy, close to 700 acres. In fact, they're held by John and Patsy Burrell, they're held by Joan and Dick Dunham, they're held by Sarah Jones and Stan Hirschhorn, they're held by me, they are held by Ronnie Dick Farm. We did this because we all are deeply engaged with the rural character of the area. It is what brings us here, it's what holds us here, and we wanted to stay that way. We all gave up something to do that. However, when an outside company with no relationship to the town, with no ostensible benefits to the town comes in and interrupts that type of vision that we have all worked hard to create, it is not just unfortunate, it seems somehow that it should not be allowed to happen. And I applaud you all for looking at this so carefully, and I think it will continue to do so. Thank you.
Joan Redmond.
So, well, I have rewritten my notes so many times, based on what I've heard today. Have been really some interesting comments and different perspectives and a lot changing, I think, potentially with this project. Initially, my feelings were that the 26 or so acres of forest that Carson-Solar, where Carson-Solar wants to build one of their arrays, is a mistake. It's counterproductive to remove the forest when the possibility of preserving it and perhaps erecting solar in another area exists. The forest is already sequestering carbon and combating climate change. Why exchange one for the other when perhaps combining both is possible? Keep the trees, preserve the wildlife habitats, and perhaps relocate the solar. The forest will continue to provide carbon sequestration far beyond the 25 or so year lifespan, as well as continue to filter rainwater from soils, remove pollutants from the air, and provide oxygen.
There is no downside to preserving the forest, no risk of pollution, no degradation to the land, and no equipment maintenance and loss of habitat. Today, with forests disappearing around the country and beyond at an alarming rate, we need to preserve them more than ever. No matter what, it is vital to nurture and protect all the wooded land on the subject site as a condition of licensing Carson-Power. However, the environmental and physical impacts of this project are far from ideal. Pine Plains can do that.
Marcel. Marcel. Boston?
Thanks. I just want to echo the comments as well that was made that you'd be time to the panel and you know it's a time commitment and a lot of effort that goes into it, so thank you. My wife Rebecca already spoke. I actually wasn't going to speak today. She's the public speaker and made all the great comments and some really nice story about why we don't have things in 5 minutes. Can have a real sort of negative impact on it. I did want to just take some time now to speak because sort of sitting here and just listening to you know, the discussion and Frank's summary about the secret process. You know, sort of had a couple of observations that I just wanted to make. You know, just sort of listening to the way that process is described, it boils down to you know, a very subjective assessment, right? Like what is you know, material negative impact on the environment. And when you look at the list that you know, Frank went through, there's a lot of subjective questions in there, and I think if you asked every person in this room to answer those questions, you probably get an equal number of different responses. So I think when you sort of listen to that, and you also hear the conclusions, which are, you know, as far as we're aware, there's no impact, or you know, not that we've heard, or you know, it doesn't sound like there's an impact. To me, it feels like making a decision based on that without a full study just seems like the wrong answer. So I think, you know, to echo the comments that others have made, I think, no, I didn't really see when you listen to all of that, what the basis is for not requiring, you know, the impact assessment and, you know, not pausing and taking time to make sure we get this right. So that's why thanks very much.
Sarah?
I'm not gonna use the microphone, I'm sure all of you. I live on Beaver Road, I own about 40 acres of land, I have put it in conservancy because I care about the rural character here. I fell into this valley that I lived in over 50 years ago and thought I had 20 couldn't believe how beautiful. And it's been maintained that way. And we've all been so fortunate. And I'm also a member of the town board, and I was involved in drafting the solar law, and I'm the liaison of the planning board. So I've gone to all the meetings, I followed this project very carefully. I think the planning board has done an awesome job of documenting and thinking about and doing their job. And I've been very impressed with that. But what has bothered me, and it's bothered me from the very beginning, is what Joan is talking about, which is the trees. More than half of these solar panels are going to get water. And I it just like hits me. I know those forests. I've ridden my horses up there for decades. They are beautiful. That area is the end of a 2-mile long ridge line. And they're going to take the top of that wall. And I have a visceral reaction when I think about that ridge line.
I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't reset. I didn't reset it. That was the wrong time. Oh. Okay, so Daniel, you're back up. And anyone else, last chance to get on the list. No, this is for.
No.
Is that Gala? Gala? Yeah, you just come up over here if whoever wants to sign it for be on the list. Okay,
I think in addition to view shed, which is paramount.
we can't hear you. Yeah.
In addition to view shed. The thing that we should all think about is the unintended consequences of this project. Number one, it's likely that all the panels will come from China, which produces right now 80% of the world's PV panels. They're projected to produce 95% of the years. They're mostly made in India and the province. Whose electricity is coal, panels are made heavy moving coal electricity. And the province is notorious for using slave labor. It's been reported in Washington Post. And then these Chinese panels go to the Chinese port by truck, and then they're shipped by shipped across the United States, and then trucked up here at my place. All of which use chemical fossil fuels, polluting the environment. And then associate myself strongly with this veterans comments. And then on top of all this, they're going to cut down 26 acres of trees, which is quite very important. So when all this is said and done, how green is the project? Today, this board said that the array should displace 15,000 metric tons of carbon over 25-year life per year. Per year. And this is an estimate that I think is an overestimate. I'm going to do some research on that. PV panels degrade as soon as they're deployed, they produce less energy every year. They are they also depend on the weather. We know that smoke and clouds both prevent PV panels from working efficiently. And according to the Weather Service and the information I got from our local airport, Dutchess County only gets 167 days of sunlight each year around. That's less than half. So I think this estimate is lower. I think their estimate is lower. On top of that, the construction is going to take 6 months, according to what there's said today. Up until now, I was still 6 to 9 months. But anyhow, 6 months of traffic on 199 and cause more air pollution, cause more noise pollution, a lot of aggravation. There's also no talent. Business, our local retailers will lose as a result of that traffic. And people who are considering to buy here, they scratch my place off the list because of that activation. And real estate agents may say, I don't want to take somebody to see houses. I have to go on I don't take them on a very serious route. So this can have very serious unintended consequences. We will follow.
Just a few quick. Everybody's been so articulate today, myself excluded. I want to make just one quick point. Thank you for what's here from the Dutchess Land Conservancy. Dutchess Land Conservancy holds 59,000 acres of conservation in Dutchess County. She holds DLC holds conservation easements on property abutting this property. It holds almost, I think, 700 acres within the stone's throw of this property. Scenic Hudson, I don't know who's looked at Scenic Hudson website lately, but Scenic Hudson's promoting solar energy. In fact, one of their biggest pitches, if you look at the 2022 report, is a project they have to help solar companies locate sites in the county, in the Hudson Valley. We really, and I'm glad Warren raised the question of what's this easement really going to look like. I know what the DLC look like, and I know they come to our property every year to inspect. That's for 20 odd years to make sure that we're doing what we should. And I simply wanted to suggest that if you're going to look at the easements, you really ought to be requiring that this easement go through the DLC. That's it.
Wow. Pavan? Right.
Good morning, everybody, neighbors, board, professionals. We thank you again, because I know this is a thankless job. And you're caught between a rock and a hard place, but I'm sure that the decision you come to on this whole project, please consider that the technology is changing rapidly in this area. And the solar technology is going to be very different in the next 6 years. To which, there's an article which came in the Wall Street Journal last week, which I brought. And there's talk about energy from space. And there's talk about how we can harness solar power that never goes in. So if the town is making a decision, which is 25 years going to be kind of living with us, I think the town should look at this very, very carefully as to what legacy do we leave for the generations, our children, other people who come to this town, and should have a broader perspective of the benefits in terms of the tax incentives and in terms of other incentives as to what, in terms of pros and cons, are we going to achieve. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Eric Gallagher?
Eric Gallagher, right here, we heard most before where the White House that was first finished identified as having the most high contribution for today's presentation, are still pretty much the same in their house, so most impacts for I do want to thank the opportunity for the ability to have our comments recorded. I do want to actually take credit to you. Do believe that did, especially in our case, of our property, our concerns with the view shed, did do more than what I expected them to do to help find a solution to that. So I do want to give credit to that and your effort. However, I do want to kind of echo some of the sentiments of my neighbors, especially when it comes down to the consistency of the community character and community plans. So we moved here in 2017 after I spent about 10 years flying for the active duty Air Force, and spent years visiting this area when I was basically about 12 years old. And brought my wife here. She followed me on this, and all the places that we could pick in the world when I got out of the active duty, we picked here specifically Pine Plains because of the community character. And the phrase I always came back to was the character of the land. It's just, there's something about it, if you know, you know. I still serve in the Air National Guard at Newport, fly C-17 aircraft there. It's an interesting perspective when people are underneath one. Although this project is not visible from, let's say, 199, when I do fly over Hudson Valley, I've never successfully found my house over one time, but will now be able to. I do there's consideration. This is an identifiable landmark that Pine Plains will now propagate to the rest of the world from above, on the side, wherever. It still does not have a negative visual impact elsewhere. Certainly now I know how to from the air. At least located Pine Plains. I'm not sure that's a good thing. Also, I've been an aviation professional for about 15 years, military and civilian. I do have a master's degree from Harvard University in environmental management and sustainability. We did study and put into well, we did more study and training with that, but basically the recently it's management and sustainability practices. This project will offset 1.495 million gallons of gasoline per annum. Said another way, in my 20 years of aviation experience, that's 4 coast to coast flights. One time from the East Coast to the West Coast, back to the East Coast, we did it 2 times. That's the equivalent energy usage. So I offer that not to alleviate any responsibility for us to do nothing as far as green energy, but that's another way of saying, are we willing to enter into a contract, the usage of this land and permanency, essentially give up our community character in favor of an energy savings that is negative. Also, the last logical obstacle that I get into with this is the consistency with community plans and consistency with community character. If this project is consistent with community plans per this document, how is it not consistent with community character? How are those two things out of alignment? The community character should match the community plans. The plans should match the character. The fact that these two things do not match is certain. To say the least. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your
Michael Zilla, did I say that right?
It's solid.
Zala, oh, that's a no.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Zoll. I'm the attorney for Township of Ross. I'm the attorney for Carson-Power. So first, I want to thank the board. You guys are taking a hard look at this project. I know, obviously, you can very much comments that one takes it very seriously. And it just, breaking, concerned with the issues. I know Carson-Power.
We're having a little trouble hearing you. Is it on? There we go.
Better. So I guess, I'll just first thank you for obviously taking the hard look projects and giving such consideration to it. I know Carson-Power is, so I guess the public hearing for this began in January, and that 5 months of going back and forth of information and that Carson-Power providing information. So I think here, yes, my thought is that obviously Carson-Power wants to respond to all. Provide response to those and also provide response to everything that Mr. Ryan submitted today. Getting a chance to look at it. But I think once those responses were in, I think that this board has the information they a determination in this case. Whether you're giving up the declaration or negative declaration. And again, as I mentioned before, this isn't the end of the process. It's really concerning special use permits. So again, I think the ask for delay would just be once Carson-Power can respond to the comments, Carson-Power can respond to the alliance. Thank you.
How long do you think to respond to what's been received today?
So I actually haven't seen what's been submitted today. And so if it's okay, perhaps I can take a look at it and then get a response to it.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, go ahead.
Got the one final thought. Just my last final thought that I wanted to get on to say out of the community here is a reminder that if a positive declaration in the end will only yield about a year delay on this project being completed, then I would say Pine Plains has very little to lose by issuing a positive declaration. If anything, it results in the status quo for at least another year while we get our ducks in a row and do some of the hard things, the community's asked to do. So from a community perspective, positive declaration, there seems like there's a downside there for us as community members, whereas I think if the question was proposed to the Carson-Power, the answer might be a little bit different. That's the last I wanted to do. So that it seems to me as a layman, there's very little downside to issuing a positive declaration and giving us maybe that you're breathing room to reevaluate the soil wells. Thank you.
Oh, Sarah.
I will take the opportunity to finish my statement, which has to do with not just that I care about the forest, but why do we care about the forest? And why do we care about loss of forest habitat? And I don't know if all of you are aware, but the loss of bird life in this country has been unbelievably frightening. And the loss of insect life has been unbelievably frightening. And the loss of pollinators has been equally frightening. And it's those things that we should be concerned about. Also, when you chip wood, you get methane. And that's not a desirable thing to do either. So I say keep the forest. I'm in favor of solar. I'm in favor of solar on its site actually. I think they've done very well with the visuals. I think they've done a very good process, but they have been downplaying big time the loss of this spot forest.
Is anyone out? Last chance. Okay. So with that. Warren, should we move to close the public hearing in relation to seeker? Pending the electronic submission that Mr. Lyon is gonna send.
I recommend we put a pause to the public hearing at this point. I'd like to go into the county client session with the board. To discuss, procedure, and how we go from here. And then go back.
So a brief pause. Okay. But then the other things that we have to talk about, we'll do after an attorney-client.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna take.
Make a motion to put a pause in the public hearing so we can go into.
Have a motion to. Second, Helen, all in favor? All opposed? All right, the motion, the meeting is paused. So can I have a, wait, where's Vaughn? You. Oh, there it is. Can I have a motion to return from executive session? All in favor? All opposed? All right, we're back. Public hearing, special meeting.
So I just want to make one comment. We went into an attorney-client session. It was not for any deliberation. No vote, there was no discussion regarding substantively deck or neg deck procedural issues were discussed.
All right, so at this point, what I'm going to ask for is a motion to close the public hearing in relation to only in relation to seeker issues for verbal comments right now and written comments as of the end of the business 4 p.m. on Friday, the 16th. Let me just say, and then the public hearing, if it gets to that point, will be kept open for site plan and special use permit review. Can I have that motion? So, can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So the public hearing. Let's close as I described. And now we're done? We're done, right?
Just so everybody understands, the anticipation is to finish the seeker process, make a determination on seeker. If it's a deck, it goes into a DIES process, a whole different process. If it's a neg deck, then we move on to the site plan and special permit. We don't have those dates scheduled for those.
Oh, okay. And also from the applicant, there was a letter that listed all the current versions of all the submissions, I think came. If you guys, it would be really helpful for us because it's file sizes and everything. If you can put that in a Google Drive folder and then share it with us. And then we can import it into our Google Drive folders. So that for the plan, our working folder for the planning board, so everyone can see everything. Because I know that like one of the recent submissions, it was like, this thing was how many megabytes? And it was just, and I know we get those emails and he puts in, Vernon, like puts in like links and then we forward them and they don't go anywhere. And it was when our email system is very security conscious. So when you forward, it strips out any of the links and then everyone gets one attachment instead of all the attachment. If we can get your Dropbox folder, whatever you have it in, that we can then just say, so we have the one thing, this is the application, these are all of the current files, this is all the current things, if we can get that.
Take that letter and use it as a table of contents for everything that's up to date in the application.
Do we know when that letter came or what? I don't know.
Just last week.
Yeah, so I mean, well, you should know, or whoever it came in for Don, so.
It's wow, I think they'll look and just.
Sure.
Yeah, we want just like, this is the folder, this is it, this is all the current things, this is all we're looking at, everything else.
I'll send it to Tricia to make sure that it's. We're talking about your letter, June 5th, 2023, Carson-Power, with the timelines, the states, each application submission, we like a board members would like to have a package of that, okay?
Should we mention our next meeting?
Oh, yes.
Can I?
No, go ahead.
And it's also, it's, I think this is important, so I think the board wanted that, soon, next, if possible, next, early next week, sure, Tuesday. I think it's easy to do, because you've got it all, just do it. And I also asked for whenever you can do this, a hard copy, so that I also have a hard copy, each document, but even that.
Sure, does anybody else need a hard?
I would love a hard copy.
I would, okay, it's gonna be a lot of things, if you don't mind.
Understood.
Okay. We don't.
Well, so send it, Warren, send it to Ethan to town hall. You know what, send 2 to town halls, and we'll put one in the folder, the file. Yeah. Okay, and then,
Just for the applicant, as I hear, it's a pod deck, that's not as difficult but to get that out. If it turns out that it's gonna be a neg deck, it's gonna take, the town board of this all, some time to formulate that, to want people to understand process, maybe so.
the planning board, just planning board.
Plan, but
Yeah. And then so the applicant, the answer that you guys were talking about would have to also be in by Friday at 4 p.m. Just to be clear on that.
And earlier we better.
Yes, yeah, at the latest. And our next meeting is the 19th, Monday. And the way we structured that meeting, it's not for Carson-Power starting at 6, but the meeting's starting at 6. We have a whole ton of things to work on. And at 7:30, we will, so Carson-Power won't happen before 7:30. So anyone interested in Carson-Power, at 7:30, we're actually going to do a public hearing for the marijuana manufacturing facility. I don't know how long that's going to be, if anyone's even going to want to speak on it. And then we will move to the Carson-Power portion of the meeting.
Did you say you're open for written comments by the end of Friday?
4 p.m. Yes.
Is that public? Open to the public?
Yeah, public written comments, yes.
Mr. Gallagher, questions? Yes.
Yes.
nothing will be accepted on secret after that.
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to hold myself accountable because I got a heritage vote in my credentials and I was nervous. Not getting my problems. I was all high backwards. And so think about this one was supposed to be one insurance. One is correct. I or on there.
Okay, so is Warren, are we? Warren, can I adjourn the meeting?
Yeah.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, wait. So Ethan and Vicky.